A momentous few days for Irish rugby, really, in that Joe Schmidt is confirmed he's leaving and Andy Farrell is coming in. We will touch on Schmidt's legacy and his era in a moment, but I think we're all fairly familiar with that at this stage. Andy Farrell as a head coach, nobody really is familiar with, but you've both worked with him. I guess, Tommy, your main exposure to Farrell might have been the Lions tour, or did you have certain Ireland camps with him as well?
Yeah, with the last couple of years with Ireland as well. Obviously the Lions in Australia was my first encounter with him, and listen, I don't think you can be anything but impressed with him. He has a real charisma. He is a true alpha male, a great leader. You can see why throughout his career with Wigan how successful he was. And then to go into coaching, he had a great impact. I thought he was really top notch, and to see how far he's gone with Ireland and working under Joe Schmidt, shows the quality of him. And I think in particular, because they would be quite two different characters, I think that they kind of align very well together, which has always obviously worked well with Ireland.
I remember watching the Living with Lions. I think it was from the 2013 series. It may have been from the more recent tour, but either way, the point stands. It was quite striking that Farrell was doing most of the talking, certainly the talking that made the final cut. Anyway, I'm sure Gatland was saying his bits and pieces, but if you had just flicked on casually and didn't know your rugby, you could have easily presumed that Farrell was the head coach, Tommy.
Yeah, he has a great presence about him. I think I read Rory Best speaking about it as well this week, talking about how when he asks you to do something, he has a great way of making it connect with you. He has a great way of showing the sort of passion and what it means to him. And in turn, as a player, it kind of rubs off on you. And, I think that as a leader, I know I was listening to one of the English players saying recently that because all teams have so many leaders now, a captain isn't important. But I can see, with the likes of a Paul O'Connell or Rory Best or an Andy Farrell when he was with England, you can see how they're so successful, because somebody who has that sort of figure at the top, who paints a picture of what you all want to follow as a team, makes it so much easier. And I think him going into the head coaching role, it will be very different. It'll be interesting to see how he takes that on board. But certainly my experience with him has been really positive.
Yeah. Mike, you'd have dealt with him more around Carton House, I presume. Andy Farrell, give us your impressions of him as a coach firstly, and then as a personality.
Well, first of all, he's a big guy. He's about 6'3" that way. And interestingly enough, when I was starting off in Harlequins, I played a game against him. I think he was playing for Sarries at the time. Yeah. So, yeah, he's impressive in the flesh, and he's a very clear picture of how he wants things to be done. He's working in the defence. He was, he's very specific about how he wanted you to defend, and if you have that clarity, it makes things easier. Now, how is he going to go as a head coach? Not sure. I mean, if he's anything like he went as a defensive coach, I think it could be very good for us. And I suppose everyone has to start somewhere as a head coach. So I think he'll do well. What
was his favourite method of defending, Mike? How did he have you defending, or was it different approaches for different games?
It's quite simple. I mean, he likes us to watch the ball, not the man. Because his philosophy is if you're watching the ball and the ball's lifted, you're all getting off the line at the same time. And a good phrase of his is that attacks are always trying to tell you lies anyway. So watch the ball, get good spacings, get off the line and kill your opposite man.
Rog has been bringing that up actually a good bit lately, where he's been talking about how he's gone to watching the ball as opposed to watching the man. So I presume that's only to a point. You're not to ignore the fact that there's a two-man overlap to your right. You have to be looking at both, I would presume. Yeah,
to a certain degree, but you need good spacings too. So the death of any defence is a break through the middle. So if they can go around you, good luck to them, but they're not going through the middle.
Okay.
So even if there's a wide overlap, sometimes there's nothing you can really do about that. And if you spread out wide to try and cover that, then you're going to leave holes in the middle. So if they're going to score, they might as well score on the edge and make the conversion more difficult.
Is that watching the ball, not the man, sounding familiar, Tommy?
Yeah, it's something that he's definitely brought up a lot in meetings. For the likes of myself and maybe the outside backs, it is a bit different, obviously, because as you say, you have an overlap outside you. You could have a winger hugging the touchline. You have to obviously watch the 10 to see where his eyes are looking, where he might kick it. There's a lot of space to look at. But yeah, it's something, it's what Mike said there about manipulating the defence or manipulating the attack. With Joe Schmidt, he is always about trying to trying to set up his plays to try and make it difficult to defend. Where with Andy, he's been on the opposite side of things. He tries to paint a picture that when an out half or 9 looks up, they see one thing, and then all of a sudden when the ball comes in or out of the scrum line out, it's a different picture. So it's trying to keep the attack on their feet as well.
Okay, that's very interesting. So in the same way that Joe Schmidt's talking about animation in attack, Andy Farrell has you guys animated in defence, and there might be a sudden shift in you might look like you're going to do one thing and then he'll shift what you're about to do last minute or late on kind of thing.
Yeah, stuff like that. I mean, it was always really, whenever you had I suppose the two teams attacking and defending against each other, when you have the two backlines and Joe was in charge of the attack and Andy was in charge of the defence. I mean, it was honestly a battle every Tuesday and Thursday session, and you could see they could almost take great pride in it, depending whether it was going to be a defensive session or an attack. So they've always been trying to get one up on each other a little bit, which is a kind of a competitive sense, which brings out the best in both sides too. So it's, you never want to be predictable as a team, and certainly with the amount of video analysis that goes on behind the scenes nowadays, the amount of people who are churning through footage. You can see Joe Schmidt is constantly changing the way he attacks, like little subtle passes, little subtle movements in defence, particularly out wide. It's about trying to do that as well, but at the same time not give things away. And hence why you see the likes of Jacob Stockdale. He's come from, say, where Les Kiss was with Ulster at the start, and a type of defence, to then when Andy Farrell, he went into Ireland, it was a bit different. And it's not something you can just pick up straight away. It's something you have to get a feel for, and you can see that those players, particularly Keith Earls, I think Simon Zebo is excellent at as well, that it makes it very hard for a 10 to try and read what those outside backs are doing. Yeah,
it's very interesting insight for us to get. It's almost been creative in defence, which instinctively we wouldn't think that's what you're doing actually.
Another thing he's big on is your attitude in defence.
Okay.
So he has this thing he wants called bounce. So it's pretty much like bouncing on the balls of your feet, ready for the ball coming. I mean, I never particularly enjoyed defending because most of the lads are quicker than me. So he wanted you to be genuinely excited about getting off the line and smoking someone. So that's a big thing he wants to see in defence. I mean, if you're just standing there kind of like, like a statue and there's no bounce or eagerness out of you, he'll give you both barrels over that. He wants, so it's psychological, because he wants the attack to look up and see the defence practically vibrating to get at them.
Thanks a million for watching. If you want to subscribe, well, there's the button right there. If you want to see more videos, hit that down there.